we started off this conversation just checking in about what was showing up, and I was talking about the emotional stuff, the feeling emotions, feeling the body, having an easier access point than my thoughts. The other thing that continuously has shown up the last week, like a buzzword, is just so much stuff coming into my reality around authenticity. And I'm not talking about, ego based human authenticity. Like just full on soul level. I am living as integrated as I can. I don't have disparate parts that I show different people. I have it's like this desire to move into such deep self-love and acceptance that there's no way you can't be yourself, because you're aware. You're aware of how much you love yourself. You're aware of how much God or source or the universe loves yourself. And you're aware that everybody else has that going on as well, whether or not they're connected to it, but they are that. And that just becoming this huge permission slip to not give as much of a crap about most things and really stepping into your power. I am working with it on a conceptual level at this point and trying to embody it, but it's such a beautiful thing to strive towards. And I do find that just saying be more authentic doesn't necessarily help. I think for many of us, and for me in particular, it feels like the biggest step on that path is self-love and self-acceptance of moving towards that. For me, that feels like the access point is coming more and more into, yeah, self-acceptance and self-love. It's like if you can get there, so many other things start to fall into place with ease.
Totally. Yeah, I would say that almost every podcast we probably say some version of this, that self-love is the answer. It is the answer. And it's an act of revolution at this point. Self-love is an act of revolution against the matrix right now. And it's such a powerful vibration. But I will say the way that we just to drive the point in that, the little me is so conditioned to see love as conditional.
Yeah.
If I, achieve this, I'm worthy. If I make a mistake, I'm not. So we're just really always in this game we're playing with ourselves around worthiness. And it does take this bigger perspective to see yourself as somebody who is a soul or a spirit, or there's some part of you that's coming in to do this human life, but you're doing this human life with so much love. Love isn't even a question. Worthiness isn't even a question. So for me, my meditation practice, my spiritual life over the last 30 years has brought me to that understanding of who I am. And then my job as Ashley is just to remember that over and over and over again. When I have a situation that puts me back into unworthiness, I just work it to bring myself back to the truth.
Yeah.
And how do I know that it's true? Because it feels it, because I feel it, because it feels that way, right? No, there's no way to prove that any of this is true, except that it feels better. It feels in alignment with myself. I know when something feels true and if something doesn't feel true, And so that's been the greatest discovery of my life, really, is that we were always love. That's who we are. And we've forgotten. And that's what I think when people talk about the great awakening, that's all we're talking about. That's it, is seeing past the conditioning of unworthiness to the truth. And that truth is, it's not about the ego. The ego can get on board with it. And then you're a much nicer ego. If your ego gets on board with the truth of all you are is love, which is going to annoy people, but I don't know how else to say it. How else do we say it?
Well, that's why I was slipping in also self-acceptance, because I think to me, it feels tricky to sometimes separate divine love or source love from human love. And so that word does, I think sometimes, I know it does for me, it can trigger me or create a kind of deep false belief around what love is, or maybe what self-love is. So that's why I like also mixing in, sprinkling in self-acceptance, because part of it is also just having no judgment or resistance to all of life that's showing up in your life, including the hard emotions, the hard feelings, the hard situations, which we are presenting to ourselves for our own growth. And so sometimes self-love, I think for me, it can be a little triggering. So when I just think about self-acceptance and allowance and appreciation for everything that is just everything is here for me, and being in less resistance with all that's showing up, particularly, it does feel like for me right now, it's a lot of it is around what emotions am I feeling in situations. And you were hinting at that when you were talking about that, which is the emotional guidance system. How do I know it's right? How do I know I'm on the right path? You were saying it just feels, you could feel it, right? And I think I am trying to trust the process around the feelings being the guidance system more. And the biggest piece of that has been revolutionary for me is utter acceptance and allowance for all the feelings, including the
Right.
hard ones. And that is true self-love. That's true self-acceptance. Like if something bad happens, you get to feel angry, you get to feel fear, you get to love that you're feeling anger and fear, because those are important emotions, and they're not nothing is created or felt or experienced in this world for nothing. That's all serving. So yeah, that feels like that's where I'm at with it, is just trying to fine tune that guidance